Hello people, my name is Exalclaw and today we are talking about the one, the only, second most famous Blue character out there, Bluey. Yes, my heart still belongs to the one and only Blue's Clues. I am the Black Steve. Just like many other Americans in the oh-so-abysmal United States of air, I spent my Thanksgiving dinner talking to my family, listening to conversations that would set my people back by 5 years, and scrolling my phone. I stumbled upon a tweet that got me thinking about children's games in general. The tweet in question said, Grown man disappointed to find that game designed for literal children is lacking in content and substance and only takes 1 hour to beat. Now, the game in question is Bluey the video game, released November 17, 2023, and of course features the character that took the world by storm due to its appeal to children and for opening up old wounds in adults that are stunted emotionally, Bluey. Now, if you're to tell me that I and all of my 20-something friends got together one day in the living room to watch a children's cartoon, I would tell you we're either about to roast Caillou for the umpteenth time or we're talking about Miss Frizzle and the Magic School Bus. But no, in this case, we are actually watching Bluey, and man, the show hits. Like, I completely understand its appeal to children in that it's colorful, it's bright, the themes are fun, but I can absolutely understand why so many adults love the show, considering that it really does touch on so many things that are unhealed wounds for many adults, things that they're starting to worry about themselves as they become parents. Discussing the way that adults interact with each other in a world that kind of keeps them isolated from each other due to work. So then, which begs the question, if the show's so good, why can't the video game be? And I guess the question that this really made me want to ask was, does it really matter what adults think of children's games? And in this case, I think Bluey's a good way to talk about, because by all standards, outside of Paw Patrol, Bluey is the children's show that's taking the world by storm. Now, I want to get this quick disclaimer out the way. In this specific case, yes, simply because that is an IGN reviewer, that's literally his job. If there's anyone to ask your critique when it comes to grown man talking about game, it's me. It's the grown man setting up a camera in front of him right now to talk about this kind of interesting topic to himself. And no shade to the reviewer and no shade to the original tweeter either, honestly, because by on the surface, they're not wrong. That is a grown man talking about a video game that's ultimately targeted towards children. And I guess the reason I would put my 2 cents on that comment is because even if you weren't an official video game reviewer, on some level, I think it's okay for adults to be a little disappointed when it comes to children's games. I want to get some obvious stuff out the way first in terms of critiquing specifically the Bluey video game that I think will apply to other children's games as I go on about this. I want to check that claim about it taking 1 hour to beat, because if it does take 1 hour to beat, I would consider that a big failing as a video game in general, but especially as a choice for Bluey, which is just a world and a set of characters that has so much more that you can include that definitely would take more than 1 hour. And after checking, not only does it take 1 hour to get through the story time, but if you go for all the collectibles and side quests, the game rarely maxes out past 3 hours for anybody. Most of the time, I don't have a problem with short play times. You know me, we play indie games on here. All of the indie games, 9 times out of 10, are going to be short little quickies that we get done together and then talk about for the next week afterwards. I'm not looking for huge long things. The problem with Bluey specifically is not only is it obviously capitalizing on a huge character, but it's asking you to do at max 3 hours of playtime for $40. That's a whole movie ticket and snacks price. So immediately, there are some on the surface things that the Bluey video game specifically is worth getting some scrutiny on. Respectfully, I think that any video game, regardless if it's for children, adults, teenagers, should at least have a playtime that matches the amount of money that you're going to drop on it. But outside of that surprise twist at the beginning of this article, this review of the game is pretty decent and goes into why they feel like it's not good. It can basically be put up in a nutshell and doesn't actually feel finished. I also want to give a special shout out to this review from the crew at Aftermath from Luke Plunkett. Real quick, if you don't know about Aftermath, I highly suggest going to check them out. I'm a subscriber to them. They are a worker-owned, reader-supported video game journalism and pop culture website that uses a lot of industry veterans. And considering the terrible year that it has been for video game developers and video game journalists in general, their current venture is something that I am very much looking forward to. And no, I am not just saying that because I got featured in their newsletter, because I made a hilarious, gut-wrenching comment in the blog, but because they, from what I've read so far, they actually write some amazing features on this, so definitely go check them out. But enough about that. The Aftermath review also had a lot of the similar complaints as the IGN, with the most Heartbreaking being the game is boring to play, has almost none of the magic of the TV show, which is often at its best in moments of high excitement or quiet reflection, of which this game has neither, and just generally feels like a lost opportunity given the gulf and difference between the quality of the game and the show. So, as the tweet said, it's not just one grown man, but multiple grown men disappointed. But again, this brings me back to the original question. These are grown men talking about what is ultimately a children's game. So, do men or adults at large really need to have a say when it comes to children's game? And the argument that I'm making here is sort of. Where I push back a little bit on this statement is the fact that I think children's games and children's content in general is some of the best opportunity to fill something with substance and content that there is. Now, I'm taking a bit more of an optimistic perspective and guessing what the original intent behind this tweet is, in that maybe a grown adult's idea of a content and substance is obviously going to be more than what a kid's is. I'm assuming that the tweeter is making the assumption that the reviewer was keeping the Bluey video game to some kind of high standard as a indie game that you might get like Chanted Sonar or a Little Nightmares or Baldur's Gate 3 or something. Although Bluey would be an awesome character in a D&D party. The immediate thing that I want to say to that is I don't think something being targeted for children does not mean that you should avoid putting substance or content into it. I honestly think that that's a really big disservice to children. I think there's a tendency to think that when you are making something for children, whether it be a toy, a video game, or even a TV show, it's rife for people that want to take shortcuts while still getting a big buck. Now, in this case, they're capitalizing on a titular character that, like I said earlier, the world is fully in love with Bluey. But I think that's an attitude that sometimes gets reached out to children's shows in general, because if you look at even Cartoon Network's output of things at the moment with shows like Total Dramarama, you are seeing a lot of people use old material or relying on the namesakes of things that were originally meant for children that actually, when you look at the original shows, have a lot of content, have a lot of substance, have a lot of things going for it that make it have a high rewatchability, in certain cases with video games, high replayability. But since this new attitude is being adopted by more people, that if it's for children, you don't have to make it about anything. You just need to make it colorful and attention grabbing. You lose a lot of learning opportunities for children. Now, I might be talking as a spoiled brat right now, because immediately when I think about the children's games that I played, I go to one of the biggest PS2 classics of all time, SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom. The original Battle for Bikini Bottom came out in 2003 when I was 3 years old. So I quite literally played this thing, probably not when I was 3, but a few years after the fact, when I was a literal child. And that game is chock full of content that had you playing for hours. It's so good that they actually came out with the rehydrated version for it in 2020 that, guess what? I actually played. And make no mistake, SpongeBob has not been free of the taking shortcuts mentality that's been aimed at children. Again, this isn't a Bluey exclusive issue, but it is just this attitude that I think we should avoid in being so insensitive to what children do consume. To make a bit of a even broader argument, I think there's a reason to care because children in general can't fend for themselves. They can't advocate for themselves. They do not know what they're missing. And I think because they don't know, a lot of adults can get away with being like, oh, because they don't know, who cares? But I think when you take the time to service and really cater to one of your most vulnerable demographics, i.e. children, and make sure they get the best stuff, that attitude ends up being carried on into work that you get to do in the future, as well as the standards that kids have for themselves and content they consume later on. You know, I've been seeing on Twitter and even part of my, real big boy job, how children are in some cases becoming literally less literate. The reading level for a lot of kids is not where it's supposed to be at right now. But even when you go online, you talk about the media literacy takes that you say that are just god awful sometimes. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that children are being inundated with content that just no longer wants to teach them anything anymore, or even like engage them in meaningful ways. So I guess the whole point of making this video and even opening up this conversation in the full place is to say, yes, it is grown man reviewing a game aimed at children, but I do think a lot of times grown man does need to review game for children to make sure children are still being taken care of and catered to and actually given a damn about. Because a lot of times children are a demographic ripe for taking advantage of in what they consume. Well, yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. You think adults should review children's games? You think the adults' opinions matter, or is it just about entertain the child so that way they don't get in the way of their guardians' goings and outings and whatever may have you? I'm interested in hearing what you guys think. Thanks for watching if you made it to the end. If you guys have suggestions of your favorite Bluey episodes, also drop that down there. I'd love to check them out. In the meantime, take care of yourself. Don't play the Bluey video game, apparently. Or do. You have your own opinion. Regardless, I'll check y'all out later. Thanks.